So today what we're talking about is the topic of worry. And a lot of people worry, and I've been one of the biggest worrywarts ever. So what we're going to look at is how to live worry-free, because it is actually possible to stop worry if we know how. And what we're going to be covering today is why it's essential to stop worrying, why it's so important that we must, for our health and well-being, stop worrying, the actual mechanics of worry and the causes of worry, because we need to understand this, otherwise we just do it habitually without even thinking, or we are thinking but we're not thinking why we're worrying. Then I'm going to share my brand new Worry Free Me program, where you can learn how to stop worry in 30 days or less. So apparently we have quite a lot of thoughts today, every day. We have approximately 60 to 70,000 thoughts every day. Can you imagine sitting there with a stopwatch or a stop clock or whatever they're called, and every time you have a thought you actually click that clock thing? You know how they have things to click how many people come through the gate? If you were to do that with your thoughts, that would be a full-time job in itself. And it's really quite staggering, I think anyway, that we can have 60,000 thoughts and yet not be aware of, I don't know, 95% of those, or maybe even 99%. And there's a lovely quote here by Baz Luhrmann. He says, "Don't worry about the future or worry at all, because worrying is as effective as trying to solve an algebra equation by chewing bubblegum." In other words, worrying is a complete waste of time, which, if we're worriers, we actually know it is. So let's look at the dictionary definition of worry. To feel or cause to feel anxious or troubled about actual or potential problems. So this is quite an important point here, is that the problems can be real or they may be potential, and as we're going to see, they may actually be imagined. They may actually not be real at all. So the way I like to look at worry and describe worry is that it is mentally rehearsing what we don't want to happen. I just love looking at it like that, because that's really what it is. It's like we're going over and over in our mind with an imagined outcome, and we're just doing it. We're mentally rehearsing it, and usually it's a negative thing. I mean, we don't worry about something good happening. We're worrying about something bad happening, and I have my own terminology for that, which I'm going to share during this webinar. Also, worry has a lot to do with overthinking, and what most people don't realize, and I only really learned it through my Qigong training and many of the other trainings that I've done, is that we're thinking too much. We shouldn't actually be thinking as much as we do, but if it's a habit and it's our norm to think as much as we do, we don't even know that we actually shouldn't be thinking that much. Our mind is there to be used as a tool when we need it. And actually, as I have learned through Qigong training, when we're not actually doing anything, our mind should be very still, and we should have very few thoughts, and sometimes even no thoughts going on in our mind. So is that your experience? Do you experience a completely still mind that doesn't think when you don't have to be thinking? And this thinking mind we can call the monkey mind. And for a lot of people, the problem is the monkey mind never switches off, right? It's just going rabbit, 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 monkey, rabbit, whatever. It's just going. So the monkey mind is actually a Chinese term that they use a lot, because we learn a lot in Qigong and other techniques that I use to still or stop this monkey mind. So the monkey mind is unsettled, restless, capricious, whimsical, fanciful, inconstant, confused, indecisive, and uncontrollable. That is how they describe the monkey mind. And what we have to learn to do, or one of the things that we have to learn to do if we want to stop worrying, is to stop the monkey mind. Now, there's a lovely quote here by Mandy Patinkin, who says, my life exists in an imagined reality. And reality is the state of things as they actually are, rather than as they may appear or might be imagined. And the problem is, worry is in large part imagined reality. So it's not actually reality, it's imagined reality, and usually it's a negative or pessimistic imagined reality. Now, as we know, we can either be in the future, in the present, or in the past. So that means our mind can be in the future, it can be in the present, and it can be in the past. And so what I want to ask you as you're watching this is, like, where are you now? Well, hopefully now, because you're watching this, your mind will be quite present. But in general, you know, where is your mind? Is it in the future? Is it in the present? Or is it in the past? And mainly for people who are worrying, the mind will be in the future, right? But in a negative case scenario, it'll be somewhere in the future, thinking negatively. Now, worry is also very connected with fear and anxiety, as we're going to see. And one of the things that we have to understand about life in general is that we live in a universe which is ruled by universal laws, and one of those universal laws is the law of cause and effect. In other words, what we do or even think has an effect. And we're going to be looking at some of those effects in a minute. Because with worry, unfortunately, those effects are not positive, they're not beneficial, they're not life-enhancing. Now, anything capable of being imagined can be reality. It can become reality. We know this. It's like everything we do in life. If we have an idea for going on holiday, meeting a friend, getting a new job, moving house, buying a car, it all starts with a thought, right? And then it becomes reality. So anything that we can imagine can become reality. Of course, this is not good news for worriers, right? Because worrying and expecting potential negative outcomes is only going to lead us further down the track of those negative outcomes. It is not going to go into the other direction. We're going in the wrong direction. We've got to turn around. So, you know, for you, as you're watching this right now, obviously you must be interested in stopping the worry habit, otherwise you wouldn't be taking the time to watch this. What do you fret and worry about and even make yourself sick about through this worry habit? And there are a lot of things that we can worry about, right? For example, a lot of people worry about what other people are thinking about them, or they worry about what other people are going to say to them. You know, they're imagining conversations going on in their head and these negative, worst case scenarios, situations or conversations. Maybe if you're ill, you might be worrying that you'll never get better. And I certainly did a lot of that, and a lot of people that I work with, they do a lot of this. Maybe you're worrying about your job, your career, house, friends, finances, debt, your children, family, retirement. What is it that you worry about? And the question is it reality or is it imagined reality? We've got to get a grip on this. And has your imagined reality become reality? I certainly hope not. And, you know, if we don't want this imagined reality to become reality, then we've got to do something about it. We've got to stop worrying. Because let's look at what actually happens inside our body when we worry. Now, Candice Pert was a PhD master who looked at this in depth. And she looked in particular at how emotions and feelings, and therefore thoughts, because they're all connected, affect the mind and body at a cellular, chemistry, physiological, biological level. And she wrote this fantastic book, Molecules of Emotion. And Bruce Lipton, and there's me with Bruce Lipton very recently where we were both speaking at a conference, he talks about this in The Biology of Belief, where he talks about how it's our environment that changes our genes. Our environment changes our genetics. And even though the environment could be, you know, what we're eating and toxins in the earth and electromagnetic fields and all that sort of stuff. Really what we also have to consider is the fact that it's what's happening around us that is making changes at an emotional and thinking level that then affect our body inside of us. So this is sort of how it works. This is like the ABC process of how our environment, creates a consequence. So we have our external environment, and we also have our internal environment, which is whatever is inside of us, in our mind, in our emotions, in our physical body. And whatever is happening, if we look at it from a standpoint of our external environment, whatever is happening in our external environment will create an internal response inside of us, right? So somebody could ring you and be rude down the phone, or maybe somebody cancels an appointment, or maybe somebody cuts you off in traffic. Whatever it is, things are always happening in our external environment. Things are always also happening in our internal environment, which is our thoughts and our feelings, and also our habits, our daily habits. But whether it's external or internal, there's going to be an internal response to whatever is going on in our life. And that internal response literally changes things internally at a cellular level. Our emotions and our thoughts change our chemistry. Okay? So if we're, for example, feeling joyful, that is going to have a completely different chemical result inside our body compared to if we're feeling sad. It literally changes our chemistry. It changes the chemicals inside our body, and that is going to have a knock-on effect at a cellular level, at a molecular level, at a quantum level inside our body. It's going to have a biological effect, and then there will be a consequence. And if this sort of stuff goes on and it's too negative for too long, then the negative consequence will be unhappiness and sickness, because we live in a universe of cause and effect. So let's look at some of the physical consequences of worry. Now, in Chinese medicine, different emotions relate to different organs, and I've done a lot of study in this. It's very fascinating. I've done a huge amount of healing, healing the internal organs through healing certain emotions, and that's actually in my Inner Smile, Smile Your Way to Inner Peace program. If you're interested, goes through how to clear negative emotions from inside the organs. But if we look just at the worry and anxiety are said to affect the stomach and the spleen, those particular organs in general. I mean, they'll affect our whole body, but in particular, it literally stops the flow of qi in the stomach and the spleen, which is why they say it ties up the qi in knots. And that's why we say, for example, my stomach was tied up in knots. And of course, this is going to affect our digestive system, because the stomach and the spleen play a pivotal part in digestion, okay? So does the liver. But worry really can affect our digestion, right? So if people have issues such as irritable bowel or any digestive system issue, we're going to have to look at emotions in general, but we're definitely going to have to look at the issue of worry, or the habit of worry. And we're also going to have to look at anger and frustration, because that affects the liver, which is part of the digestive system. And even though I'm separating out here, we are a holistic being, and everything impacts everything else. So that's why, for example, people say things like, well, I was sick with worry, or I felt sick to my stomach, or my stomach was churning, right? Because it literally is. The worrying is doing this. It is literally changing the body at a physical, physiological, biological level. It is affecting the body. And then people wonder why they end up with things like stomach ulcers, digestive issues, nausea, vomiting, diabetes, stress, insomnia, and an overall shortened lifespan. And I've worked with people who have literally, quite literally, not just metaphorically, but literally been nauseous and vomited with worry and anxiety. And that is extreme. If somebody is at that place where they are literally vomiting or feeling nauseous, that is a big, big sign that there is an absolute overload of worry and fear and stress going on in that person's life. And that is a very unhealthy place to be, and it needs to be addressed as soon as possible. So we can literally make ourselves sick with worry. Now, we have to remember that physical symptoms are the end result of a lot of stuff that comes before. Physical symptoms are simply the end result. So we have to then look at, okay, well, what's happening mentally and emotionally? Because that's what comes before. And there are both sort of mental and emotional causes, and also there are mental and emotional consequences. So we're going to look at some of the sort of consequences, if you like, of worrying at a mental and emotional level. So if, for example, we're worrying a lot, overthinking, etc., then we are going to end up with things like brain fog, mental confusion, inability to make decisions or think clearly. We're not going to be able to switch our mind off. We're going to have self-doubt, maybe mind paralysis, brain freeze. We're going to have a lot of pessimism and be making poor decisions. And these are just some of the consequences. This is not all the consequences by any means. And one of the things that people do with worry is that they fret and overthink and rehash and expect the worst. And if this is you, I'm sure you can recognize this. And the reason that I'm able to speak so deeply about this topic is that I've been the best guinea pig for worry. And that also allows me to, because of the techniques and tools that I've either learned or developed myself to change this, I know how to change it. So we cannot just, make ourselves sick with worry. We can literally, and we do literally, think ourselves sick with worry through what is going on in our mind. And mind and thoughts and emotions are very intimately connected. So, we can have a thought which creates an emotion, which creates another thought, which creates another emotion, or it could start with an emotion which creates a thought, so it just goes round and round in a circle, right? And we can either have like a positive spiral or we can have a negative spiral. And unfortunately, a lot of us can get trapped in the negative spiral, and so we need to get out of that. Now, the more we worry, the more worried we feel, the more anxiety we experience, and the more fear and overwhelm we experience. And then if we're going really downhill, then we'll start to go into powerlessness and hopelessness and, I can't cope and I just want to give up and it's all too much and all that sort of stuff. So that's the downward spiral which we want to get out of. So we can also feel ourselves sick with worry. So remember, a lot of worry is what we call imagined reality. And the thing to really understand about worry is that it is a mental habit. In other words, it is not an emotion. A lot of people can think that worry is an emotion. It's not. It's a habit. It is a habit of thinking. Okay, so a habit is something that we do over and over and over again until we do it automatically. And thinking is how we use our mind. So worry is imagined reality, and it is also a mental virus. We can start to look at it as a virus, and this will really start to help us change it. If we can see that worry is a really unhealthy mind habit, it is not normal to worry, even though it may, let me say actually, no, it's not natural to worry. It may be normal for you, but that doesn't mean it's natural. And there's a difference between normal and natural. Natural is what is in harmony with the natural world and nature and our own nature. And normal is what we normally do, which may not be natural. So it's important to notice the difference. It is a habit, and not just a habit, it's also an addiction, right? We unconsciously become addicted to worrying. And one of the things that I discovered on my journey back to health was that stress is an addiction. It's not just a habit, it's an addiction. So worry is an addiction and stress is an addiction, just like eating sugar, drinking alcohol, drugs, whatever. And as with any addiction, there's always a reason behind the addiction. Somehow we're actually trying to make ourselves feel better. So the roots of worry lie in fear. And this can be either fear of the known or fear of the unknown. And often there can be what I call missing information in worry. That we haven't actually recognized that there's a piece of missing information, that there's something that we don't know and therefore we're worrying, but often it can, include some missing information. And just a note on anxiety, because again, a lot of people think that anxiety, or classify anxiety as an emotion, and it's not really an emotion. Anxiety is a psychological and physiological state. So it's a state of mind and it's a state of body. It's not an emotion, and what it is, or what it signifies usually, is a whole build-up of a multitude of emotions. And we've gone into overwhelm because of this build-up of emotions, and we've gone into anxiety. But it's not just happening in our mind, it's happening in our mind, it's happening emotionally, and it's also happening physiologically. So if we have anxiety, we really need to get onto that as well. Because it builds up and becomes symptoms of illness. So if we want to just understand, well, what are some emotions? Raw emotions are things like fear, anger, sadness, hurt, and disappointment. But worry and anxiety are not really emotions. So as I've mentioned earlier, worry is what I call WCST, which is worst case scenario thinking. Right? It's not the best case scenario thinking, it's the worst case scenario thinking, and it is a habit. And there are consequences of worrying in all areas of our life, because we just can't enjoy things if we're worrying. It's like it could be the most beautiful sunny day, but if we're worried inside, it just ruins everything. So as I mentioned before, we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. But interestingly enough, I don't know if you've ever noticed, even though, what we imagine can become reality, most of the things that we worry about never happen. And it really is true that worrying is a complete and utter waste of time and energy. It is completely and utterly futile. And yet we do it. We get stuck and trapped in the habit of worry. Now, some people might say, oh, well, don't worry, be happy. Just get on with it. Stop worrying. And, well, if it was that easy, we would do that, right? So, why is it that we can't just be happy? Well, there are reasons. And why is it that even though we don't want to worry, and we say, well, even when we become aware that we're worrying, because that's the first step, by the way, unless we're aware that we're worrying and we know how to differentiate between worrying and not worrying, then we will think that our worrying is normal thinking when it's actually not. Okay? So remember, worrying is expecting a potential negative outcome. It is a mind habit, but it is worrying that something is going to go wrong, something isn't going to go right, the worst case scenario. That is what worrying is. So if we don't want to worry, why is it we still worry? And why are we addicted to worrying? Because if we are worrying and we can't stop it and we keep doing it, then I can assure you you're addicted to it. Well, first of all, it's part of human nature. Not necessarily to worry, but the habit of worrying is connected with human nature. And as humans, we're programmed and we need to stay safe and we need to survive and we need to stay alive. Because if we don't, then we're not. So we have an inbuilt system to make sure that we stay safe and that we stay alive. And in order for this system to work, one of the things that it's doing is that it's always on the lookout for potential danger. And this is very, 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 very important. So, as I mentioned before, we have things that happen in our environment. And say, for example, there are things going on in our external environment. Then there will be an internal response inside the body. And that will create an emotion, maybe it will create a thought, and it will create a change at a cellular level. So we have an inbuilt software monitoring system that is scanning for danger 24/7. It's just inbuilt, like an inbuilt software program. And we need this program. And the way this inbuilt software works, if you like, is that it's to do with our central nervous system, or the CNS. And part of the CNS that we really want to be looking at here is what is called the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, or I like to shorten it and just call it SNS and PNS. And the sympathetic nervous system is all about stress, safety, and what I call SOS. It's all about monitoring, do I feel safe in my environment? Because we need to constantly and always, from the moment we're born and even in the womb, we need to feel safe. And so we have this inbuilt system that is designed to tell us if we don't feel safe. And most people know that as the stress response, could be the fight, flight, freeze response, the sympathetic nervous system response, where all the functions of the body change immediately to deal with either a real or a perceived danger or threat. And this is perfectly normal. This is part of our innate body functioning, if you like. So we have, for example, as I said, we have this internal response to the external environment. It can also be an internal response to our internal environment, and our internal environment is our thoughts and our feelings. That is our internal mind emotional environment. So whether it's something going on inside of us or whether it's something going on outside of us, there will be an internal response at an emotional mind, a cellular level, which creates a cellular physical change in the body. And as I said before, we live in a universe of cause and effect, so something is going to happen. Whatever we're thinking or feeling, something is going to happen as a result of that. So if we give an example here, say a child is growing up and they're very young, and by the way, all these patterns of thinking, they all get set up by the age of 7. Say the parents are arguing in the external environment. In the internal environment of the child, there's going to be certain emotions which are triggered, certain thoughts which are triggered, which is going to create certain physical cellular changes. Now, the child isn't going to be aware of any of that, right? But it's going to be happening because it's the inbuilt stress response system of the body to respond in this way, because it has to stay safe and it has to stay alive. So, for example, the internal response might be fear, stress, worry, maybe a feeling of constriction and tension, for example. And then that will also create more worry and fear. And later down the track, years down the track potentially, or maybe just a few months, could be, turned into sickness, because dis-ease and distress turns into disease. So this is how it works. We have, things happening in our environment which create a response inside of us, which then create emotions and thoughts and start to set up the pattern of worry, for example, because that's what we're focusing on today. Now, remember, worry is a mental habit, and it is also when it becomes an addiction, but we don't know it's become an addiction. But really, habits are addictions, or addictions are habits. And these mental and emotional patterns, which we create as a result of what is going on in our environment, are mostly set up by the age of 7. So these patterns become like the groove of a record. our responses to what is going on, out to what's happening outside of us, they become a habit inside our brain, literally, and in fact inside our whole central nervous system, where we unconsciously train ourselves to respond in a certain way to the way that people speak to us or treat us, or whatever is going on in our environment. And they literally create neural pathways in the brain where we're just going down the same neural pathway again and again and again. And worry and overthinking is one of these habits that is set up. And we set this habit up at this very, very early age, and we don't even know we've done it. And that's why it becomes normal, and we think it's natural, but it's not natural. But it becomes normal for us to worry and to project into the future about the potential worst case scenario and whatever. So we are unconsciously programmed and conditioned in the first 7 years of our life because we need to stay safe and we need to feel loved. So as human beings, we have what are called emotional needs, and we all have these emotional needs. We're all human and we all need these needs. And these needs are non-negotiable. Every human needs them. And they've done lots and lots of experiments with poor little animals, you know, like mice and rabbits and monkeys and whatever, where they've deprived these animals of these basic needs, and the consequences are horrendous. You know, that they get the babies get absolutely traumatized and sometimes die. Now, that is happening to us too, except we're incredibly resilient. But inside, we can be emotionally dying, if you like, because if our emotional needs are not met, then, you know, we're going to feel really unhappy. And one of the consequences out of all of that is that we're going to create a pattern of worry. So some of these needs that we must have met are things like feeling safe, feeling nurtured, feeling loved, feeling wanted, feeling cherished, feeling important, feeling valued, feeling respected. And this is just a few of them. So if you're a real worrier, you might like to ask yourself, as you look at this list, when I grew up in the first 7 years of my life, how safe did I feel? And you can even rate each of these on a scale of 0 to 10. You know, how safe did I feel? How nurtured did I feel? How loved did I feel? How wanted did I feel? How cherished did I feel? How important was I made to feel? How special did I feel? How much was I valued? How much were my needs respected? And there's a lot more needs than that. And for example, when I'm working privately with clients, we go through an emotional needs audit, and we audit how much were your needs met as a child. So having these needs met is really, really important, because what happens is we create this habit of worry to unconsciously protect ourselves from what we were afraid of as a child. And most of us have no idea that worrying is actually a habit of protection. We're actually unconsciously trying to protect ourselves from a potential negative outcome, because somewhere in the past there was a link to whatever the current thing that's going on now. There's a link to something from the past. And so we're trying to protect ourselves from maybe being rejected, maybe being ostracized, maybe not having the love that we wanted from our parents. There'll be some connection there, because whatever is happening in our now is a direct reflection of the past if that past is not healed. So worry is a unconscious mental habit to protect ourselves. It's a form of self-protection. And it is the mind's way of trying to protect us from unseen danger. And it's very important to recognize here that it's the mind that is trying to do the protection here. Worry is all in the mind. It is not in the body. It ends up being in the body because it affects the body, That's why we say, you know, worry affects the stomach and the spleen, and we feel nauseous and sick and dizzy and whatever. But it's not coming from there initially, it's coming from the mind. And the mind takes over and goes into all this worry and overthinking when we're out of touch with our body's internal communication. In other words, when we're not listening to what our body is telling us, when we're not able to hear or interpret our body's needs, when we're disconnected. So we actually have 2 intelligences and 3 brains in our body. And the question is, are you using all of your 2 intelligences and 3 brains? So let me tell you about these 2 intelligences and 3 brains. We can loosely say that we have a head intelligence, which is our head brain, and we have a body intelligence, which is everything from the neck down, mainly in the torso, and really and literally our heart and gut brains. So we literally have 3 brains, and the definition of a brain is a network of neurons with intelligent purpose. I'm not going to go into too much detail of this here because it's a huge, huge topic. Have a whole separate program on just that. So we have 3 brains, and we have therefore multiple intelligences. And the head brain's job has a different, well, each brain has a different job actually. Each of these 3 brains, they have a different job, and they're designed to be used as a team. And the head brain is not designed to be looking after the safety aspect of ourselves. That is the job of the gut brain. Okay, one of the jobs of the gut brain is about safety and survival. The head has other things to do. So the question is, do you know how to read and use your 3 brains? Because if you don't, then you might want to learn how to do that. And if we don't know how to use our 3 brains and use them together as a team, then we're probably going to find ourselves worrying a lot, because the head is trying to take over the job of the heart and the gut brains. And it's not designed to do the job of the head and the heart. It's only designed to do the job of the head. And that's exhausting for the head, because it's trying to do somebody else's job. Just like if, you know, you're in a company and you've got a job to do, and you've got 2 other colleagues that sit at 2 other desks, and they have completely different jobs to do, and you have no idea how to do their job, and yet you're trying to do their job. That's very stressful. To sort of summarize what we've covered so far, we could say that there are 2 main causes of worry. There's more than that, but 2 big causes of worry are fear, which is often an unconscious fear as a result of what's happened to us in the past, which has not yet come into our consciousness. We're not really aware of it, but it's still playing out. And also habit. Worry is a habit, and again, it's often very unconscious. We're unaware of it. And these are thinking patterns which have been set up in the past, usually by the age of 7. So as Aristotle said, apparently, we are what we repeatedly do, and excellence then is not an act, but a habit. So have you become an expert in worrying like I did? And also it's true to say that it's not what happens to us, but it's our response to what happens to us that makes all the difference. So, you know, things can be happening around us in our life, but it's how we manage our response to, you know, internally to what's happening that is going to either make us happy and keep us happy and calm, or make us really stressed and worried and fretful and anxious and all that sort of stuff. So the question is, if you are a worrywart, you know, what would your life look like without worry? So let's look at, well, what is the opposite of worry? If we were not to have worry, what would we be experiencing instead? Well, we're going to experience things like inner peace, trust, harmony. And all of these come from feeling safe inside, from feeling really safe from the inside. And we're going to have a lot of optimism and positive thinking. And this doesn't mean forced positive thinking, because there can be a lot of positive thinking out there where people are just sort of saying these positive thoughts in their mind, but they're not really registering. We'll have authentic positive thinking and authentic optimism. So, wow, what would that be like? And so we're going to have peace, trust, harmony. We're going to have a lot more joy, fun, freedom, optimism, hope. Our mind is going to be calm. I've put freedom there twice. It's obviously very important, which it is. We're going to be sleeping well. We're going to have good health. We're going to have mental clarity. We're going to have a lot more positive results, because remember, we live in a universe of cause and effect. So life without worry means that we have life-affirming positive thoughts. We have life-affirming positive feelings and emotions. We have life-affirming healthy actions and behaviors, which means we get healthy, life-affirming positive results. So how do we get there? Well, we're going to have to make some changes, because if worry is a habit, and habits can be changed, then we're going to have to change some habits, right? So we're going to have to create some new mind habits. We're also going to have to create some new behaviors and lifestyle habits. And we're going to have to learn some techniques and strategies to, in a very practical way, reduce and clear the physical anxiety and stress and worry. On top of that, one of the really important things that we have to do is that we have to learn how to come into the present moment. Because remember, when we're worrying and we have this potential negative outcome that's going round and round in our head, and the worst case scenario thinking, that is all the future. It's like we're in the now, but our mind is in the future. So we have to learn how to bring our mind back. It's like we have to rein it in and bring it back and have the mind in the present. It's an absolute must. So if you're interested, I'm going to, in a moment, share my new program, How to Be Worry-Free, or Worry-Free Me. I have a new program, 30 Days to a New Worry-Free Life. And if you have the habit of worrying and you've recognized this worrying habit a little bit more through watching this webinar, then you might like to consider joining me on this training. My question to you is, how would it feel to know that you can stop worry at any moment, that you have the tools to do that, and that you can do that no matter what is going on in your life? And what I mean by that is that you could have the worst possible things happening in your life. It could be either sickness, it could be financial problems, it could be relationship problems, work problems, whatever is going on externally, like real life things are going on. How would it be if you actually could stop being worried about either what is happening now, but also about, this potential negative outcome, worst case scenario future that is also going on in your mind, whereby everything is going to get 10 times or 100 times worse than it is already, right? Because it is possible, it is actually possible that even if things are pretty bad now, it is actually possible to not be worrying about it. And I'm speaking from personal experience here of having gone through quite a lot of really, really stressful situations, but knowing how to stay worry-free. And how, for example, would it be to be able to sleep like a baby at night without having to worry, right? Because if we're worried, normally it really can affect our sleep. And if we don't have good sleep, then we can't actually operate the next day. It is so important to get good sleep. And a lot of people think that the reason they're not sleeping is that, but they don't, put it this way, they don't really know why they're not sleeping properly. They're just not sleeping properly. But what they don't understand is that if they're worrying and they're not resolving their issues in their life, which could be many different types of issues, it's actually going to affect how they sleep. And this is how we actually get to sleep better, it's one of the ways is to actually stop worry. So, instead of having the stomach ulcers and the digestive problems and the nausea and the vomiting and the insomnia and whatever, and instead of having the brain fog and the mental confusion and the doubt and the pessimism and all that negative stuff, And instead of having all the worry and the overwhelm and the powerlessness and the panic and the hopelessness and whatever, how would it be instead to have the inner peace, the trust, the harmony, the safety, the joy, the freedom, the optimism, and all the good stuff? Because this is all possible, right? If you know how to do it, it's all possible. And it can be learned. So I'm running a training which will only be run once, because when I run these live trainings, I do them once live and then they go on to on demand, if you like. So in 30 days, literally, we can really start to knock this worry habit on the head. And what it's going to include is 2 live online trainings, plus about 10 hours, maybe more, of practical lessons, which is videos, audios, exercise sheets, etc., in an online private 24/7 access portal with lifetime access and online community support. And what I'm going to be teaching, or what you're going to be learning, is how to change the mental habit of worry at will. So exercises to do this, how to manage and clear some of the emotions which drive worry, how to use your multiple brains to tap into your intuition and do what is right for you, how to practice presence and staying in the now rather than being in the future with worst case scenarios, breathing exercises to calm the mind, the nerves, and stop fear, and practical mindfulness techniques to stop worry in its tracks. Now, for the first 48 hours from this live webinar, I'm also going to include some bonuses. And these bonuses are the Introduction to Emotional Mastery, which is quite a comprehensive program on understanding emotions. Very in-depth information that you just probably won't hear. I say just probably, you probably won't hear somewhere else. It's like years and years of research and practical application of understanding emotions to be able that I've put this program together. Also going to include my 12 Steps to De-Stress program, which has got techniques for de-stressing, which is obviously very useful for, goes hand in hand in a way with stopping worry. And also a lovely little meditation to calm and de-stress the mind and body. So that will just be for 48 hours from now as I'm recording this live webinar. And normally if I was running this live training, that would be $497 US. And if I was then putting it on demand, it would be probably around $247 US. But what I'm doing for 48 hours from this live webinar is it's going to be $197 US. So it's a huge saving for 48 hours. Plus, for the first 10 people or 24 hours from now, I'm taking it down to $147 US. It includes the 2 live online trainings plus 10 plus hours of practical lessons and videos in the private portal, plus the bonuses, the fast action bonuses of these 3 programs. So you go to kimknighthealth.com, and on the home page you will see 30 days to a worry-free you. You just click on that link and it takes you through to this page where there are 2 options. There's the Worry-Free Me for New Zealand, and it's in New Zealand dollars. And then there's the Worry-Free for international clients in US dollars. Anybody outside New Zealand pays in US dollars. And I've already taken, this is the discounted rate already. So remember that in theory this would have been $497 and it's now down to $147. So that is massive, massive, massive saving. And really, you know, I need to get quite a few people to to make that cover my costs. So that is what you do, and you choose your option. So if you're an international client, you make sure, for example, you press that one, and then you press register now, and then that takes you through to the next page. And then you just if you've already got an account, you sign in, and otherwise you just put your email address and carry on and finish the registration process. So that is how to sign up. So remember to choose the right option, you know, according to whether you live in or outside New Zealand. So I hope that you've enjoyed the information that I've shared today. Remember that worry is a habit. it can literally, and it will literally make us sick. If it doesn't make us sick, it's going to make us unhappy. Imagined reality can become reality. We must change our worry habit. It is so detrimental, so mentally, emotionally, and physically detrimental. So if you do have a worry habit, I highly recommend that you do something about it as soon as possible. And if you want to come on a journey with me and learn how to do that, then please do so. So thank you for joining me, and I may see you inside the program.